Welcome to the Explainer. Listen, if you've been putting off automating your revenue cycle because of some horror story you heard at a conference or read in a vendor pitch, you are absolutely not alone. We all know that healthcare finance is high stakes, tightly regulated, and incredibly unforgiving of mistakes. But today, we're going to look at how that justified caution has kind of curdled into outdated assumptions. And honestly, these assumptions are causing massive revenue leakage in your practice right now. So let's dive in and bust the 5 myths of RCM automation that are literally costing you money.
What's really fascinating here is the sheer size of the hesitation gap across the industry. Think about this. Nearly 60% of healthcare providers still haven't implemented AI or automation anywhere in their revenue cycle operations. And this is happening even though executives overwhelmingly agree it's a top priority. So we've got 40% moving forward and a massive 60% just standing frozen on the sidelines. That staggering data point really begs the question, right? Why is there such a huge gap between intention and action? Well, it almost always comes down to emotional and operational root causes. It's not a lack of facts out there, it's the persistent, outdated myths that make leaders feel like automation is some massive leap of faith, rather than just a highly practical tool. To bridge that gap, we need a roadmap. Today, we're going to systematically break down 5 major roadblocks: the staffing myth, the cost myth, the compliance myth, the complexity myth, and finally, the DIY setup myth. After that, we'll look at the ultimate resolution by partnering with ProMantra. All right, let's jump right into myth number 1, staffing and replacement. This is arguably the most visceral fear practice administrators have. I mean, nobody wants to tell their loyal team members that a machine is taking over their jobs. The myth says automation replaces staff. But the reality? Automation actually empowers your staff by removing tedious tasks. In fact, a 2026 healthcare finance workforce survey showed that teams struggling with staffing shortages are turning to automation to stretch their existing staff further. They're just taking that repetitive, mind-numbing data entry right off their plates. And this perfectly illustrates what happens when you free up your team. When machines handle the high-volume repetitive work like checking eligibility, your trained billers can finally focus on where human expertise is actually needed. We're talking about appealing complex denials with payer-specific documentation, negotiating payment plans with patients, or investigating really unusual reimbursement patterns. The automation correctly flags the issues, but your human team resolves them. It's a game changer. Okay, moving right along, let's tackle myth number 2, the cost barrier. There's this common assumption that smaller practices are simply priced out of the market, leaving this top-tier technology only for the massive hospital systems. The myth pictures RCM automation as this one giant, all-or-nothing software purchase. But the reality is that modern automation is modular, phased, and totally affordable. You absolutely do not have to overhaul your entire revenue cycle on day 1. You can start small, prove the ROI, and then just grow from there. Here's a typical phased approach, and this is strongly supported by CAQH index research. Step 1, start with eligibility verification. It's high volume and it delivers immediate savings. Step 2, automate your claim status checks so your staff can stop agonizingly asking portals, "Hey, where's my claim?" Step 3, layer in denial management to catch issues early on. And finally, Step 4, expand to prior authorization and payment posting. Starting with those high-frequency transactions is going to generate the fastest measurable savings for sure. Now, I really want to draw your attention to this number, $10 million. That's the average bad debt level reported by 1 in 3 hospitals today. It is a massive, glaring signal of revenue just leaking out through inefficient manual collection errors. And here's the thing, smaller practices bleed the exact same percentage just in smaller dollar amounts. So the real financial risk isn't the cost of the automation, it's the massive cost of inaction. Let's transition into the operational weeds a bit with myth number 3. Increased compliance risks. There's a really deep-seated fear that having more technology touching highly sensitive financial data automatically equals greater exposure to audits and penalties. While that might seem logical on the surface, the exact opposite is true. The reality is that manual processes hold the real risk. Think about it. An exhausted human making a coding error or missing a documentation update at 4 p.m. on a Friday is way riskier than a machine applying validated, unchanging logic rules across thousands of claims. What modern automation actually gives you is the ultimate compliance advantage, a complete audit trail. Every single eligibility check is logged with a timestamp. Every claim submission follows the exact same validated rule set every single time.
And critically, payer policy updates are applied consistently across all claims, not just the ones a busy biller remembers to double-check. It creates an ironclad level of consistency that manual processes simply cannot match.
That brings us to myth number 4, ineffective for complex specialties. Look, if you're an administrator in a complex specialty like a surgery center, physical therapy, or behavioral health, you might assume automation is only built for simple, high-volume claims. And sure, it's true that early tools were pretty narrow, but the myth that it only works for simple role sets, that is completely outdated. The reality is that modern automation is built on predictive analytics and machine learning. These models aren't just following generic rules, they are trained specifically on actual complex payer behavior patterns. Imagine knowing a claim is likely to be denied before you even hit submit. The technology can actually predict those denials, flag specialty-specific documentation gaps, track wildly varied prior authorization requirements, and adapt to continuous payer rule changes. Now, of course, the honest caveat here is that this tech works best when you have a human expert ready to correctly interpret those flags and take decisive action. And that leads us directly into our final roadblock. Myth number 5, the DIY setup myth. This is the classic plug-and-play illusion, and it causes so many well-intended, well-funded automation projects to just stall out completely. The myth tells you to just buy the software, install it, and watch the savings roll in, right? But the reality is that implementation is the real barrier. The software itself very rarely fails. It's the lack of structured implementation, training, and ongoing maintenance where your budget actually goes to waste. Let's break down these common DIY failure points because they happen all the time. Often, you run into legacy system integration issues with older EHRs. Practices wildly underestimate change management. I mean, your staff need real training, not just a login credential. Trying to automate everything at once means having no clear starting point, which causes projects to just grind to a halt. And finally, automation is absolutely not set it and forget it. Without ongoing optimization for new payer rules, the system quickly becomes obsolete. Buying software is easy. Making it actually work requires deep expertise. To underscore why getting this right is so incredibly important, look at this number, $360 billion. A recent McKinsey-affiliated analysis estimated that AI and automation could unlock as much as $360 billion in annual savings across healthcare. But, and this is a massive but, this is only possible if organizations actually implement these tools correctly, with the absolute right governance and oversight firmly in place. So, how do you capture those savings, bridge that hesitation gap, and avoid the dreaded DIY trap? Well, that brings us to our resolution, partnering with ProMantra. Outsourcing part or all of your automation rollout is often the single most strategic move you can make. ProMantra acts as that necessary bridge between raw software and actual measurable success. They combine automation-driven workflows, like real-time eligibility checks and denial prevention, with experienced RCM specialists who actually understand the nuances of specialty billing. And they do the whole shebang on a fully secure, HIPAA-compliant, and ISO 27001 certified infrastructure. You get the advanced technology and the expert human oversight it requires to actually work. All right, we've busted the myths around staffing, cost, compliance, complexity, and DIY setup. So my question to you is this. Are you ready to see what RCM automation could actually do for your practice when it's implemented thoughtfully and correctly? The smartest move you can make today isn't to keep waiting on the sidelines. I highly encourage you to contact ProMantra right now to schedule a free revenue cycle assessment. Let their experts show you exactly where automation fits into your unique workflow. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.